Am I the antagonist for choosing my son's friends over family? I have a 16-year-old son named Nate. He's been a part of a friend group of 5, including himself, since they were around 8 years old. We are white, and 2 of the other boys in the group are also white, but one is of Middle Eastern descent and another is of South Asian descent. This information is relevant. During Thanksgiving the other day, the 2 non-white boys don't celebrate the holiday, so I always invite them to our celebration. They usually come, and it's always a great time for all the boys, especially since Nate's cousins are either much older or much younger. As in previous years, I invited them, and both of them attended. My mom also brought her new boyfriend. I've met him before, and he seemed okay. Upon seeing the boys in the living room, he immediately blurted out, "Now I know those 2 young men aren't yours." I explained to him that they are Nate's friends. He whispered something to my mom, but she just walked away. Anyway, he stood by the boys the whole time, but they didn't seem bothered and engaged in conversation with him. I relaxed and went to do something else. About 20 minutes later, Nate came up to me and said that Grandma's boyfriend was acting strange. So, I went to see what was happening, and he was interrogating the other boys about their true intentions with Nate and the rest of our family. One of the boys jokingly replied, "Damn, you caught us," which set him off. I interrupted and took him to the kitchen, where I told him he needed to leave. His behavior was quite racist. He seemed surprised, probably expecting me to give him another chance, but I've read enough stories to know that he would eventually say something even more offensive. Besides, I care about those boys way more than I care about him. He called my mom over, and she pleaded with me to give him another chance, promising that she would make sure he kept his mouth shut. I told her that I'm sorry, but I couldn't care less. She became extremely upset and said that if he leaves, she leaves too. I hesitated for a moment, but ultimately decided that she can leave too. It didn't sit well with my mom, and she claimed that her boyfriend was just speaking what everyone else was thinking, and it was about time those boys stopped intruding on our family time. They left, and I still felt confident in my decision until one aunt and her daughters stated that it's true that they, along with others, don't appreciate these 2 boys attending every Thanksgiving and sometimes Christmas. They found it a little suspicious but insisted that it's not a race thing. They criticized me for choosing random teenage boys over family. In response, I told them they were welcome to leave as well, and they fell silent. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here, but apparently, many of them share these sentiments. Am I the asshole for choosing these boys over family? My mom won't talk to me now. You did the right thing by standing up against racism and protecting your son's friends. It is unacceptable for your mom's boyfriend to make racist comments and interrogate the boys about their intentions. You prioritize the well-being and comfort of the boys, and that is commendable. It's unfortunate that some of your family members are also expressing discomfort with their presence, but your response to them was justified. Your mom's support of her boyfriend's behavior is disappointing, but ultimately, you made the right decision by standing up against racism and creating a safe space for your son and his friends. Am I the antagonist for exposing my family and possibly costing my stepmom her job? I, a 19-year-old female, have 2 stepbrothers named Dave, who is 23 years old, and Jack, who is 25 years old. I also have a half-brother who is 9 years old. Growing up with them was incredibly difficult. I didn't get along with them or their mother, who is my stepmom. Unfortunately, my mom passed away before they became a part of our lives, so she is the only mother figure I've ever had. To delve into the details would be a lengthy discussion, but overall they bullied and teased me from the moment we met. My stepmom played favorites quite often. I would get disciplined for minor things, like leaving a light on, while her sons lived in extremely unsanitary conditions and wouldn't shower for weeks. At the age of 15, I was forced to get a job, while my stepbrothers were allowed to live at home without paying rent and without pursuing jobs or higher education. I moved out last year and now stay with my stepaunt, who is my stepmom's sister. Almost all of the money I make goes towards renting a room from her. Additionally, I am still expected to contribute to household chores and cleaning for areas of the house that I am not even allowed to use. I only agreed to stay with her because it was the only way my family would let me keep in touch and see my little brother, whom I practically raised. They use him to manipulate and threaten me whenever I do something they disapprove of. I recently went on a weekend trip with some friends, which was a couple of hours away. When I returned, I found my entire family waiting for me on the couch. My older brothers, stepmom, and dad were all sitting there, eagerly waiting for me to walk in the door. As soon as I entered, they began shouting at me, accusing me of turning off my location so they couldn't contact me and claiming that I told my friends to ignore them. Shockingly, they even found and harassed my friends. The argument escalated and they followed me to my room. Upon opening the door, I was horrified to find my room completely trashed. It was filled with 3-day-old food, rotting bowls and plates, and stacks of old pizza boxes. Additionally, my bed had been stripped bare, and dirty clothes and trash were scattered everywhere. The stench was unbearable. At that point, I completely lost control because I knew it was my stepbrother's doing. When I asked why they allowed him and his friends to use my room in such a manner, they simply brushed it off, claiming that boys will be boys, and that they were in a rough spot. It's important to note that I have OCD, which I have learned to manage on my own. However, it was severely debilitating during high school and almost drove me to the brink of despair. I don't let my OCD affect other people or their lives, but it greatly impacts mine. The fact that they knowingly allowed my stepbrother and his friends to turn my room into a biohazard for me speaks volumes. In that moment, I slammed the door in their faces, hastily gathered my essential belongings, and left. I haven't spoken to any of them since. However, they are now accusing me of abandoning my aunt without the necessary income and claim that I overreacted. In response, I decided to post the text they sent me online. Unfortunately, the pictures somehow made their way to my stepmom's boss, as it's a small town, and they are now threatening to jeopardize her employment due to my actions. Am I the one in the wrong here? It seems like you've been mistreated and neglected by your stepfamily for a long time. From the way they bullied and favored their own children to the unfair treatment towards you, it's clear that you have endured a lot of unfairness and abuse. The trashing of your room, knowing about your OCD and the impact it has on you, is particularly insensitive and cruel. Your reaction of leaving the house and cutting off contact with them seems justified considering the circumstances. Additionally, it was inappropriate for them to harass your friends and invade your privacy, which suggests controlling behavior. Posting their texts might not have been the best course of action, but it's understandable given the frustration and mistreatment you've endured. Their threat to review your stepmom's employment is just another form of manipulation and control. Ultimately, you are not responsible for the consequences of their actions. It's important to prioritize your own well-being and remove yourself from a toxic environment. If possible, you may want to consider seeking support from a therapist or counselor to help you navigate through these challenging family dynamics and to establish healthy boundaries. Am I the antagonist for not telling my wife she was pregnant? I'm a 35-year-old man and my wife is 32 years old. We have been married for 8 years and have always wanted to have children, but we have been struggling. We have been trying for about 6 years now, and unfortunately, we have had a few miscarriages along the way. After each miscarriage, my wife has wanted to try again and she would get pregnant, only to experience another miscarriage. 2 months ago, while cleaning the bathroom, I found a positive pregnancy test in the trash. This discovery filled me with a sense of dread. I didn't want to go through the emotional turmoil again, both for myself and for my wife. I didn't mention my finding to her and noticed that she too remained silent about it. This made me suspect that she either didn't see the test correctly or didn't read it at all. Initially, I considered asking her about it, but I was concerned about the stress it might cause if she genuinely didn't know. In the past, she had become extremely stressed and would cry herself to sleep and snap at me after each pregnancy loss. I knew how important having a child was to her, so I decided against mentioning it, thinking that it might be better to wait until she was further along in the pregnancy. After about a week and a half, she started experiencing cramps and morning sickness. She jokingly mentioned the possibility of being pregnant again, something she never did when she was aware of her pregnancy. This confirmed my suspicion that she truly didn't know. I chose to keep the secret for a few more weeks. I believe she eventually put the pieces together and began to feel anxious. Although she never explicitly said that she thought she was pregnant, I could see the signs. 2 weeks after I found the pregnancy test, she took another one, which also turned out to be positive. This led her to succumb to panic attacks related to her pregnancy. I felt dreadful. The following day, I revealed that I was aware of the pregnancy. Her anger towards me was unparalleled. She called me a horrible husband and expressed her unwillingness to have kids with me. She decided to stay at her mother's place, which is about an hour away. I feel terrible. I strongly believe that all of this could have been avoided if I had just talked to her when I first found the pregnancy test. I don't think her anger will last forever, and I'm hopeful that we can repair our relationship. Nonetheless, I feel an immense sense of guilt for what I have done. I understand that you had good intentions and didn't want to cause your wife unnecessary stress, but it was not your place to hide this information from her. You made a decision on her behalf without consulting her, and that was unfair to her. Pregnancy is a major life event, and your wife has been going through a lot emotionally with the previous miscarriages. By keeping this information from her, you denied her the opportunity to process it and make her own decisions. It is important to have open and honest communication in a relationship, especially during difficult times. By withholding the truth, you broke her trust and caused her even more pain when she eventually found out. Your actions have damaged your relationship, and it will take a lot of effort and time to rebuild that trust. In the future, make sure to prioritize open communication and respect your partner's autonomy in making decisions that directly affect their lives. Am I the antagonist for telling my family to fuck off? I, a 24-year-old male, have always been the outlier in my family. I am quieter and more introverted compared to my siblings and did not share the same passion for sports. My younger brother Sam, who is 21 years old, is a dedicated athlete, and it is evident that our parents favor him. Whenever he causes trouble, he easily shifts the blame onto me, resulting in me being punished unjustly. For instance, when he took our father's truck without permission and caused significant damage, he falsely accused me, leading to my grounding and the cancellation of my graduation party. Even when he ruined my mom's fabric scissors despite me being out with a friend at the time, I received the punishment based on his word. This pattern persists, with Sam frequently messing up, blaming me, and avoiding consequences. After completing my education, I moved far away to attend art school, and I intentionally distanced myself from home, only maintaining contact with my other brother Will, 23M, with whom I have a good relationship. Recently, I acquired a new job that brought me closer to home, and upon sharing this news with Will, my mom reached out suggesting that we all reunite to celebrate. Though hesitant, my mom promised to take us to my favorite restaurant and cover the cost. Additionally, I looked forward to seeing Will in person for the first time in 2 years, so I agreed to the gathering. When I visited home, it became apparent that Sam, who still resides with our parents, had not changed much over the past 6 years. He continues to rely on his athletic scholarships and appears indifferent towards most things. On the day of the dinner, Sam began complaining about the restaurant choice, expressing his preference not to go. After some negotiation between our parents and him, they asked if we could select an alternative venue. Despite their request, I firmly declined. I made it clear that if they wanted to cater to their golden boy's desires, they could choose another place. But I came specifically for my favorite restaurant and intended to enjoy the food I desired. Sam then insulted me, calling me pathetic and childish for not compromising. His comment triggered an intense emotional response from me. In response, I told him that he was the one who was pathetic, highlighting his laziness and inability to take responsibility for his actions. I emphasized that he wouldn't last a week without our parents babying him. My mother scolded me, claiming that I was being unpleasant on what was meant to be a joyful occasion. I countered, expressing that I had not experienced happiness in their presence since childhood. My father labeled me as a spoiled brat and demanded an apology. In turn, I told him to go to hell, asserting that he lacks integrity after canceling my graduation party and failing to apologize when he discovered that Sam was responsible. While my mother attempted to defend my father, Sam remarked that I was simply being rude because they were not impressed by my status as a struggling artist. Fed up, I told all of them to screw themselves and left the situation. I contacted Will, and I have been staying with him until my flight on Wednesday. He acknowledged that I had valid reasons for my outburst, but he believed my words were quite harsh. Will is not pressuring me to apologize, but he did mention that our mom has secluded herself in her room since the incident. You are not the asshole in this situation. It is understandable that you harbor resentment towards your family due to their favoritism towards your brother Sam and their consistent unfair treatment towards you. The accumulated frustration and anger finally came out during the restaurant incident. Your parents and Sam have consistently enabled his irresponsible behavior and scapegoated you for his mistakes. Your outburst was a result of the built-up resentment and mistreatment you have endured for years. While it may have been harsh to say what you did, it is important to remember that you are not solely responsible for the strained relationship with your family. Your parents should be accountable for their biased treatment and failure to address the issue. It would be a good idea to have a conversation with your family to address the long-standing issues and express how their favoritism and mistreatment have affected you. However, it is ultimately your decision whether or not you feel comfortable apologizing for your outburst. Taking time for yourself and focusing on your own well-being is also important. Am I the antagonist for telling my parents I wouldn't leave my child alone with them? I, 28 years old female, and my husband, 36 years old male, got married last year, and I am currently 12 weeks pregnant. Not everyone knows yet because I have polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, and I've been worried about being able to carry to term. Needless to say, we are very excited. Now onto the issue. My husband and I had very different upbringings as children. His parents could not be nicer if they tried and treated me like their daughter before we were even engaged. But my family? Not so much. My father was authoritarian, emotionally abusive. I didn't realize at the time, but every friend or specialist I've talked to has described him as such, and neglected to spend time with us. My mom was by all accounts a wonderful stay-at-home SAH mom and a caring woman. Her only flaw is that she never stood up for us when my dad was being a jerk. She would tell us in private that she agreed with us, but it wasn't her place to question him. My dad has gotten better since they became empty nesters, but he still doesn't think he did anything wrong with the way he raised us. Maybe one or two things. If we bring it up, he says that children always complain about their parents, and it won't make a difference to apologize now. And I completely disagree. Being loved by my wonderful husband, being around his family, and having this life growing inside me made me realize how horrible my upbringing really was. My biggest goal in life is to be nothing like my parents when it comes to my kids. That being said, my parents were overjoyed to hear about their first grandbaby. They talked about how I could always leave my kid with them if my husband and I ever needed a babysitter, and I immediately felt cold. I had flashbacks of all the yelling, all the times I felt neglected and unloved, their strict rules and punishments. And it must have showed on my face because my dad asked if something was wrong. I tried to brush it off, saying my husband's family was closer so we would probably use them, but he didn't buy it. He asked if we had a problem leaving our child with them. Hormones got the better of me, and I answered. I said I didn't trust them to leave my child alone with them. I didn't believe they would treat my child better than how they treated me, and I didn't want my child to ever feel like I felt. They were surprised. My mom got misty-eyed, and my dad was shocked, asking why I would say something like that. I once again reminded him of all the stuff he did as a dad. He said that's all in the past. I don't understand why it matters now. At this, I slammed my hands on the table and yelled, "This is why it matters. You don't listen, you've never listened. Why the heck would I trust you to listen to my feelings/boundaries when it comes to my child when you can't even pretend to care about my feelings when I was your child?" And then he told me it wasn't nice to swear, literally in one ear and out the other. So am I the asshole? It's completely understandable that you have concerns about leaving your child alone with your parents based on your own traumatic upbringing. Trust is an important aspect when it comes to leaving your child with someone, and if you don't feel comfortable or trust your parents to treat your child better than they treated you, then it's completely reasonable to express those concerns. Your parents' dismissive attitude towards your feelings and past experiences only highlights the ongoing issue. Ultimately, it's your responsibility as a parent to prioritize the well-being and safety of your child. And if that means choosing other caregivers, then that's your decision to make. Am I the antagonist for disinheriting my daughter? I didn't actually disinherit my daughter. It's just what my wife and her claims. My first wife had drug problems and still got primary custody of our son. I was young and didn't fight her on custody, and when he got older, we weren't close, so I felt awkward asking him to live with us. She tried to prevent us from communicating and moved around a lot, so it was always hard to spend any time with him until he got his own phone. But now I have spent more time with him, and now we are close. My second wife is hardworking and very financially successful as an engineer. In fact, she makes more than me. Our daughter takes after her. She is a straight-A student and is going to be back in school to be a nursing practitioner soon. My wife is angry with me because my daughter and I aren't close. She goes to her mom for everything and doesn't speak to me much. We were close when she was young, but since high school, it's like she pretends I don't exist. I try to reach out, but it's met with silence. I think my wife poisoned her against me because I have spent most of my money on my son. My wife told my daughter I didn't pay for a single cent of college for her, and my wife did all the saving for her college fund. I didn't contribute to my daughter's college fund. I didn't pay for any piano lessons, etc. I did pay for half of the family expenses with my wife, like the mortgage, but my extra money has been going to my son. Partly child support, but I've also been contributing outside of that. He didn't finish school with good enough grades for college. I gave him money to upgrade his grades and helped him get a place to start college. He got 2 semesters in and then left because he was depressed. He has a lot of issues from growing up with his mother, and I feel partly responsible because I didn't try to fight for custody. I give him money for rent, and he has issues holding down a job, so he needs support. My daughter recently reached out with a schedule for her and her fiancé's wedding. It had his and mom's dance, but not the father-daughter one. I was confused and asked my daughter about that, and she replied, "We aren't close enough for that." I was shocked and asked her why she would consider us not close, and she said, "Well, you basically disinherited me." I called her and asked her to explain, and she said because her mom paid for college and will be helping her with her NP degree, and I didn't give a crap about her after middle school because of my son. I explained everything I said above to her, and she knew most of it before that as well. She said I should have split my funds and time between them. I told her I felt like I did, and she got angry and said I didn't, and it's like she was raised by a single mom, and that's why she is uncomfortable with having a wedding dance with me, because it would be a lie. I felt like I was fair to them. I lived with my daughter. I just didn't pay for things outside of food, mortgage, utilities, etc. That's because I felt like my wife had it covered and my son was getting nothing. My ex-wife wasn't saving anything, and I wanted to help him because he was having a much harder time than my daughter, who had an attentive mother. But she felt I was prioritizing my son and, in her words, disinherited her. I feel like she should understand the situation, but she didn't want me to be included in the wedding much at all. While it's understandable that you wanted to support your son given his difficult upbringing, it seems that you neglected your daughter's emotional and financial needs. Your daughter has valid reasons to feel hurt and neglected. Instead of acknowledging her feelings and taking responsibility for your actions, you make excuses and minimize her concerns. It's important to recognize that your daughter's relationship with you has been influenced by the way you prioritized your son over her, and it's your responsibility to make amends and make an effort to rebuild your relationship. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.